We will be running through the town, upstairs and downstairs in this night gown, rapping on the window, crying through the lock. Are the children all in bed? For now it's
Even a man who is pure in heart and says his prayers by night may become a wolf when the wolf pain blooms and the autumn moon is bright.
Hello and welcome to Secrets Mystery Manor. I'm your host, Psychic Zelda Kelly.
Hello, everybody. Happy Halloween. Are you scared yet? Are you scared yet? Believe me, that scared me and I'm fearless. No, I'm just kidding. Does everybody have candy and popcorn and water? Hi, everyone. Hi. Happy Halloween. Happy Halloween. Wait a minute. Hold on here. Okay. Sorry there, LPA Films. We don't do that, so I appreciate you, though. Thank you. Hi, everyone. It's Halloween, and we have had a week, haven't we? I mean, hello. I got to tell you something funny. You guys are going to like this. But before I do, I want to show you two things that I just love. And I don't have shelves. I mean, I'm sitting in my tarot crime lab, right? So I don't have shelves. I have these. But I want to show you, and I'm getting hung up here all over the place. I want to show you two things that I have. Is this just not a gas? Wait a minute. Look at his little eyes. If I can get him in camera, isn't that just hilarious? I love that. That's number one. And number two, hi, everyone. You guys are just so fantastic. Hi. And look at this one. Fortune teller. You know, back in the old days, in about 1754, when I was young, I'm going to tell you, my grandmother, you know, was a card reader. And pardon the pollen voice, everybody, but my card reading grandmother would always call it a fortune teller. Tell your fortunes. See, you hear Shaggy. Tell your fortunes, everyone. Hello. Sorry, I have to have a little drink. I know it's rude, but sorry. I promise not to swallow in the microphone. Somebody got after attorney Melanie Little on her live the other day for taking a drink and swallowing in the microphone. So I promise I won't do that. My garland is coming down. Everything is going crazy, and we're here. So hello, everyone. I hope you had a great day. And oh my gosh, Auntie BB, I am so sorry. She says, had to calm the puppies down. They were barking, etc., and the screaming in the intro. Oh, well, I'm going to tell you this. My cats, and you all know Shaggy, was sitting right here by the monitor, and his little eyes were just like bugging out. Oh my gosh, he was just going out of his little mind. Hate corrupt. Well, I love you too. And if it weren't for you guys, I wouldn't be here. That's scary. Okay, I got to tell you guys really something funny. You're going to love this. So I'm talking to one of my clients today, just having a conversation, and I'm talking about the Karen Reed case. And I'm talking about, and by the way, I'm going to tell you something. Microdots has a Halloween video coming out, and that thing, I've watched it 100 times. That thing is fantastic. So if you're watching Richie, okay, I love it. I love his work. So this client of mine says, who's Karen Reed? I was shocked. I said, you don't know who Karen Reed is? He's in Florida. He said, no. Who's she? I said, well, you better be turning on. You better get with the no, buddy, or you're not going to be my client. That was a joke. But anyway, so yes, everything is going crazy. I know you've all seen the articles for Vanity Fair. And I know that you've all seen Sean and Turtle Boy. And I'm just going to say, everybody just kind of take a breath. Let this all play out. Don't get worried. Everything is going to be okay. I knew that this Vanity Fair was going to be fire. They did her a justice. Look at this, my garland. I'm falling apart, ladies and gentlemen. Oh my goodness. Hello, I'm going to just let it be. So I knew it was going to be very good and fire. Pardon me. Here we go with the voice. And hi there, everyone. Welcome coming in. And please do me a favor. Before I go on, if you haven't subscribed before, please do me a favor and click. Wait, where is it? Hello. Click on the subscribe button and click on that like button because that helps me. Will you do that, please? And I appreciate it. Thank you. And I may have to go down to a whisper tonight, so my voice doesn't sound gravelly. We'll take it as it comes. So I want you to know, and I know a lot of you saw my Karen Reed video today that I posted, there's more to come. Just like at the beginning of the week when I said this is going to be a good week for her, next week probably will be shocking. I'm just going to make that prediction. It will be shocking. Hi, everyone. Welcome. Come on in. I haven't started with the stories yet because, well, I just wanted to make sure that everyone is in here. And say, please do me a favor and say hello to Maria. She is here now with True Oracle Tarot Psychics. And I want to make a little announcement. I've got a link in the description in this video that when we are done, if you'll please do me a favor and go over there and subscribe to that channel. Hi, Candy, my darling. Hi, everyone coming in. Hello, hello. Hiya, Michelle. I want you to do me a favor and go over there and subscribe because I'm going to start going live over there and I'm going to do live readings. So all of you in the chat can come in and say, hey, Zelda, I have a particular quick question, like either a yes or no or a quick question, and I'll pull out some cards and we'll answer it for you. How's that? So I'm excited about doing that. Welcome, everyone. Welcome. Now, about Karen Reed. She's not going to run out of money. Her lawyers are not going to dump her. Nobody's going to dump her, but I'm going to tell you there's some things that are going to come from 34 Fairview that may be shocking. And, you know, I have a suggestion. And Karen Reed, if you are in here, my darling, we all love you. This is a safe space. Ain't nobody going to come after you. I guarantee it. Not while you're in here. There is such a thing that's called luminol, that if you took that, and there you can also use, there's a particular light that you can have. I'm sure you already know this, and I'm sure the feds already know it too. But I'm just saying that you could spread out that carpet that you have in storage, and you can even put a black light on it. And I don't know, thank you very much, Darcy, for that. Yes. And I'm going to say this. Did you know that a black light can even show up animal pee-pee in a carpet? Now, if it can show up animal pee-pee in carpet, it can show up that other red stuff. And I'm not going to, let's be careful in the chat because, you know, I have an AI guy that looks me over and if there's anything happening and going on, hello. But I'm going to say this. There's more to all this than meets the eye. So I want you now to really start making your notes. There is so much between the Delphi case and Karen Reed, and there's another gentleman on death row in Texas that his execution was stayed and he did not commit a crime. I want to do a little something on that. The Menendez brothers, I don't know if any of you, hold on, let me see. Anne's got a question. Will they find the couch or the sofa? I don't know if they have. But I think that they have enough. And I don't know if you saw it today, the Subisimitable Morrissey was in the airport getting ready to take a plane and get the heck out of Dodge. Now, where he's going, I don't know. But my darling, if you're watching this, Mr. Morrissey, you can run, but you can't hide. So just so you know that. Okay, Anne's got an interesting little something or other. Okay, there's text about the whole thing. And yes, there's a lot to, oh yes. There's, pardon me, I saw the text last night and this morning. So there is a lot. Thank you, Anne, for sharing that with us. And Darcy can't stand Morrissey corruption. I can't stand them all. I can't stand them all. There's two that I want to see perp walked. I know you probably know one of them, but there are two. And I'm not going to, no pomp and circumstance. I want to see Jennifer McCabe perp walked, right? Yes. The scary thing that was on the stand lying through her teeth. Don't get me started. And it's a tie between Higgy Baby and Nicholas Guarino. He needs to get a job at his family's bakery. All right. Michelle has a little something. I don't think Officer John O'Keefe had an opportunity to sit on the couch. He was jumped the second he entered 34. Yes. I was thinking that also. Zelda Kimberly says luminol would narrow down the area. It sure will. And Lynette has happy Halloween. Happy Halloween to you too, my dear little pumpkin. Love your hair. Have to start at the beginning, just jumping in. Well, thank you. You just never know what hair I'm going to have. I'm a different woman every day. You just don't know. So thank you that, you just try. That's it. That's all I'm doing. Okay. They found the blaze. If you know, you know. Mm-hmm. Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Haya says, my darling Haya, leaving on a jet plane. I don't know when he'll be back again, but I hope it's in bracelets. I can't sing tonight. I can't sing tonight, or I would be singing. Indigo Forever says, I have more than two in mind. I do too, my darling. I have two. I have a question. Does that mean that you are an indigo child? Just wanted to ask you. Okay. One is connected to Delphi. Yes. Yes. There's been some little, oh, what a tangled web we weave when we decide to deceive. I'm just going to say it that way. And Cynthia, my darling, says bravo. Absolutely. Bravo. Listen, this is why the feds, and this is why I've said right from a long time ago, this is why the feds take their time. Because most of it, because murders are usually on the state level, as we know, except when there are some exceptions, as in corruption. And that's why they are in Canton and Stoughton and Dedham to begin with. And when they opened that can, they did not realize that was a can of worms. Jerry says, bless her, half the town should do a perp walk. Amen to that. And a needle, I've got to be careful, was found but was disposed of. Yes, there are some crazy antics that happened. Indigo, no, Indigo was my horse. I lost him. He was very special. Oh, I know how that is. I had a favorite horse. He was an Appaloosa. He was a registered Appaloosa. His name was Senator's Shadow, and he was beautiful. He was a leopard Appaloosa. Okay, now let's see what some of my other... Before I backtrack, gotta say Auntie Bev is high on my list with Chris A. Jen is still my number one. That's never changed. Listen, I don't know. Are they going to have that? We may have to donate so they can build a facility to just house all these people. Hate Corrupt says, oh, my darling, embarrassed to be a resident here. Oh, honey, you know what? I hear, and I think I was through there a very long time ago. And it is a very beautiful and quaint little town. Don't let these bad apples ruin it for you. That's right. Anne says, and people call me crazy. I just connected the dots. I did too. And you know, I was a latecomer in the Karen Reed case. I did not jump in until about day 10. I admit I am a latecomer into the Delphi case. And I got it. Yeah, you can hear Shaggy back here. I've got Shaggy and Scooby and Bilbo and Sammy and Petey and who else? Riley. That's right. Okay. So that is Shaggy that is talking. He is the one with the biggest cake hole. All right. And so anyway, Michelle says, I bet the Fixer and McChins are taking turns at their front window. You know, I've had some conversations with some people that are in the know. And I told them that my idea is this. Now, this is just an idea. I'm going to tell you what my idea is. And it's not based on fact. It is based on meditation, card reading. And you know how, hello, I'm throwing out cards constantly on this stuff. But what I'm getting, Shaggy Noodle is right. And what I'm getting, pardon me, from this whole thing, pardon me, what I'm getting is that John went into the side door. I believe at one time he just fleeting thought about waving goodbye to Karen or doing something. I think immediately they took him downstairs, and when he figured out what was going on, there was someone in front of him, someone in back of him. You all know what that bulkhead looks like. Now, this is just my premonition. This is my mind's eye talking. Someone in front, someone in back. When he figured out that he was getting ready to walk into HE double hockey sticks, I'm going to say that. He tried to turn around, and that was it. There was nowhere to go. It's no wonder they changed out the bulkhead doors and all that. And as I'm saying the bulkhead, you know, Karen's got the carpet. They did change out those bulkhead doors and the knobs. Listen, the moment, sorry, there's some energy working at my front door again. The moment that they find evidence that they are going to present, that's going to be next in my idea. That John was in the house. Game over. It is game over. Now, for Vanity Fair to get their own person to give to do a little thing on the How Long to Die in the Cold, like Jennifer McCabe basically Googled, whoa, there was some energy that just hit my door. And it was loud. I don't know if you all heard that or not. Give me a second. I'm going to text my son and see if maybe he can. Okay. My son is like, did you hear it? Did you all? Oh my gosh, did you hear that? And I mean, no cat can do that. Here comes my son. Do y'all remember? I know you heard it. Everybody in my life heard it. Okay, so I'm going to be quiet just for a minute and let him investigate. Indigo is right. The carpet does not have the proper chain of custody, and that's why they hate it, because the CW wants to do everything. Nothing there? Okay. Nothing there. So I'm sitting here talking about John O'Keefe. It must be his energy, and that does not surprise me one bit. So Indigo, my darling, says, the carpet doesn't have the proper chain of custody. No, it doesn't. But I do believe that that is something that the CW got wind of and has been wanting. See, this is why they want Turtle Boy's text, Karen's text, because they want to see. It's not that they want to do witness intimidation. They want to see what they got so they can get their grubby little hands on it. Yes, yes. Okay. So yeah, Anne says an ambush, or I'm sorry, Linda, an ambush from front and back, then he was hit in the head and with a free weight. That, yeah, I'm kind of getting the same thing. And of course, you know that Chloe, and I got to tell you, I don't blame Chloe. I don't blame her. Because you're taught. I mean, doggies do what they're taught, right? And she was taught mean right from the beginning. And so when all this scuffle happened, and I'm sure Prince Albert Colin was down there too, when all of this, everything started happening, I'm positive that's when they said, get him. And that's it. And, you know, now I'm going to say something that might make a lot of people mad. And if I do, I apologize. And I'm really sorry. But these people were heavy drinkers. And Officer John, he was beyond drunk that night. I don't even know how he walked into the house in a straight line. So, Barbara, you're right, my darling. There are no bad dogs, only bad owners. That's what Uncle Brian was. So I think that his chances of defending himself were diminished because of the blood alcohol level that he had in his body. These people are boozers. I mean, come on. These are the pots calling the kettle black. They were at a funeral for another police officer in New York that day and had been drinking the whole day, went out the whole night, drinking and driving, out doing this, doing that. And yet they want to charge Karen. And they think a receipt from the waterfall or from the CW McCartney's is going to prove that she had 9 drinks. Well, listen, anybody who knows Karen, she's generous. She was probably buying rounds, or buying for she and John, or buying for other people. But listen, there are some people in those bars that know something. And I think we're going to hear a lot more. I just love it. Linda says, just my opinion, Colin doesn't know how to fight. No, he's a wuss. I could probably take Colin. He doesn't know how to fight. He's in the one that probably picked up the free weight. He's probably the one who picked the fight to begin with, and everybody else just chimed in. But, you know, there's something that bothered me. And that is that Higgy Baby and Uncle Brian moved John closer. So does that mean that they put him outside? And then Jen had to distract Karen for an hour so they could go and move him closer to the road? At some point, he was sitting up. At some point, he was sitting up, and you all know why. Because of the stains on his clothing had a downward path. And plus, he lost 3 liters of you know what. Starts with B, ends with D. How can you do that? How does that? 3 liters? Hello. So don't, one of these days, my darlings, I'm going to tell you this. Darcy says they were plotting at the Waterfall Bar. Colin came later on. Yeah. And I'm going to tell you, is there anyone in here that believes that Chris Albert walked home? That whole story stinks. Pew. What do they think? They must think that we have stupid tattooed on our heads. Don't you think that? Don't you think that? Darcy is a mother of beagles. Bless your little heart. I had a little beagle one time 100 years ago, and her name was Dottie, and she was a little sweetheart. Don't know what happened to Dottie, but she was a little sweet pea. All right, Lisa went out and got candy without us. No, she was handing out candy. Lisa. So it was late. You know, I'm hearing that there were high temperatures all over. It was warm where I am in the South today. Haya says, Zelda, I was just thinking that. Yeah, there's, if he was outside the whole time, they say. Uh-huh. That's what I'm getting. I think that the plan quickly changed in the family room. Every time I pull that out, do y'all know that I feel like I'm playing Clue? It was Jennifer in the family room that had the free weight. Whatever. But yes, unusually warm in Ontario. Hello, my dear friends in Canada. In Canada, hello, and welcome all over the world, because I love it that you all are in here, because we have friends in Australia, we have friends in Norway, Ireland, South Africa, in the UK, all over, that catch us afterward. And hello to my wonderful friends who are elsewhere, but here with us right now, and who wish they could be with us. They are on the rewatch crew, and thank you so much. All right, it's been almost 80 here, Ann says. Oh my goodness. Darcy says, they are fooling nobody. The cover-up has failed them. Oh, darling, just wait. You haven't seen nothing yet. Lisa says, Zelda, you've been spot on with your readings, 100%. Well, listen, I can be wrong. So, okay. Haya says it was very cold here, 42 degrees and windy. We didn't have many kids. I don't have any kids here. I just have and spirits or something pushing at my front door. But we don't have any. We are in a college town. I'm hearing noise going on, but we don't have anybody. Karen, my darling, says the rug could have had Officer John O'Keefe's DNA on it via transfer from the other shoes. You're absolutely right. Listen, I've been in, and I've said this, and I have to say it again for those of you who are in the back and can't hear. I've been on many of a paranormal investigation where you go into these old houses and someone was unalived in there and there was a mess and you couldn't do or say nothing except that's just the way it is. And back then they didn't have any way to clean it up. And listen, those stains remain 100 years plus. Some of these homes that I've been in, I mean, some of them were in Newport, Rhode Island, and even further. I mean, my darlings, those were back to the 1600s, before I was a little girl. And they had, I mean, they still have the spots and stains in there. And we have a new member. Welcome, Michelle. Welcome. Hi, welcome. Thank you so much for the membership. I appreciate you. Thank you. Everyone, Michelle is new to the channel. All right, a new member. Anne says BB, or whatever her real name is, was involved with Sean and Brian. Brian supposedly disappeared after meeting up with BB. I don't know. I'm kind of lost on that one, Anne. Maybe we can get a fill in later. I don't know. Lizzie Borden's house still has stains in the basement. Absolutely. And I want you to know this. And you've heard me talking about the Amityville horror house. Horror. Gotta make sure I say that. The horror house in New York still has it in the walls, in the flooring, because that ran through the carpeting and into the flooring, into the baseboards. And they've changed some of the wallpaper. They've done some surface stuff, but that is still there. And when I went there, you know, I told you my story. I didn't make it. I'm the first one that wants to go upstairs and say, where is it? I got to see it. I want to take pictures. But I didn't make it that far. And you know, that was another story. So yeah, I was at Lizzie Borden's house. I lived in Newport, Rhode Island. I'm going to date myself back when Hurricane Gloria, went through. And I was in base housing with my lieutenant commander husband. And we were there very short term. My husband at the time was at the War College, and he was doing other Navy things. And for 6 months, I got to do a round. Yeah. Yes, that's right, my darling. 84, 85-ish. That's right. I was there then. And so we went to the Lizzie Borden house in Fall River, Massachusetts. And is it really, Chrissy? Oh my goodness, that's wonderful. Well, we went there, and I think at the time you couldn't spend the night there, but they were giving tours. So we went through, and I kept getting tapped on the shoulder. Boom, boom. And something would pull my hair back here. Boom, boom. Oh my heck. Michelle just donated 5 memberships to the chat. Thank you so much. And if anyone just got a new membership, it is Michelle who did it. You are a darling. Thank you so much, my darlings. Thank you. Thank you. All right. So I've got to back up a little bit. Okay. So Pam Mirko. Hello, Pam, my darling. I wonder if the glass was checked for any DNA. I don't think so. I think that, remember the theory, swap out suspects. They backed into this. They knew what they did and they scrambled. That's why there was all this cleaning going on. That's why, in my opinion, Trooper, I'm going to say former Trooper, but Trooper Proctor walked out with a duffel bag. What was in the bag? Michael, what was in the bag? Scumbag. I mean, what was in the bag? That's right. Lisa says, yes, wonder what happened in that case. Haven't heard anything on that. Oh, sorry, I'm ahead of you. So I don't know. Okay. Anyway, Nancy, love the hair. Thank you, my darling. I thought I would wear this one tonight. And if you like it, I'll wear it again. All right, because who knows? I'm a different chick every day. You know my motto song, love is kind of crazy with a spooky little girl like me. And I just keep going with the energy. You don't know. One of these days, I could do something really radical. I don't know, but you just don't know. All right. Are they using these people to test their drug? Oh, I don't know. But we got to be careful what we put in the chat, okay? I didn't see that, sorry. Okay. But when I was there at Liz's, we're on a first name basis, at Liz's house in Fall River, Mass, I did nothing but get tapped. And I loved it in New England, except everybody kept telling me that I acted like I was from a different planet. I didn't have the correct accent. And in fact, I will tell you, while I was there, I was the assistant manager for the Newport Bay Club and Hotel. And that place was eerie. Even though it was brand new, it was eerie. And of course, I worked the night shift. I was an audit overnight. And I got to meet Meg Ryan and Anthony, I can't remember his name, but Meg Ryan could not sleep one night. And I used to have Anthony Edward. I used to have their autographs, but you know, that was 100 years ago and they're long gone. But she came down stairs and I looked at her and I said, Betsy. And she said, oh my God, I haven't heard that in so long, because I first watched Meg Ryan on a soap opera that was called Another World. And I adored her. And she was just so adorable. Well, we got to talking because Meg is actually from Connecticut. And I said, so what are you doing here? And she said, well, I'm here with Anthony Edward. And she said, have you heard of Tom Cruise? And I said, maybe. Maybe. I don't know. And she said, he is playing, and so is Anthony, playing Navy officers. I said, really? Are you a Navy officer in this movie? And she said, no, I'm a wife or a girlfriend. And she's just grinning as can be. And I said, oh, so you must be doing something else with it. And she said, yes. Well, they were there, my darling, and they were getting whatever type of, they were with the Navy, and Tom Cruise and Anthony Edward were with the Fly Boys. They call them in the Navy brown shoes because Navy pilots wear brown shoes. And I love Navy pilots. Anyway, they were making Top Gun, the first original one. It was really nice to hear from Meg Ryan. It was a lot of fun to hear from her. So, but I'm going to tell you, I've got stories. from Newport, Rhode Island, and those old houses. So yes, I got off track because I love answering your questions. But Anne, here we go. Someone told, I wonder if they checked their latest after telling me he was growing dead. Oh gosh. Sorry. I did it again. We can't put that stuff in the chat, my darling. I'm sorry. That is deadly. I don't know what he's doing. Same thing happened to us there. Yeah. Then I went to the, what is it called? Breakers. You know what's in the Breakers? The house that Dark Shadows house was in the Breakers. Now, they weren't giving tours when I was there, but it was like, oh my God, I was going around to all these houses all the time. It was pretty cool. I loved it. I loved it in Newport, Rhode Island. Pardon me, got the nose itch. So that must mean energy is coming around. Happy Halloween, everyone, and welcome to those who are coming in. And yes, I will be telling stories in a minute. Right now, I'm just having a chat with the chat. And we're catching up, I mean, after all. Okay, so let's see. Let me see who's, I love Meg Ryan. I do too. Anthony Banderas. No, it was Anthony Edward, the one that played Goose in Top Gun. Meg Ryan. I love When Harry Met Sally. Her older stuff was much better. But I still love her no matter what. Oh, Laura, was I taking too long for you? Sorry. My nephew was a Navy pilot. She's a lovely person. City of Angels. Yes, absolutely. Okay, I'm in Rhode Island. I hope you had some clams and coffee milk. I had coffee milk. I can't take the clams. It's a texture thing. I couldn't do it. Sorry. I couldn't do it. Dark Shadows, my favorite. Dracula. Let me see. Newport mansions are so gorgeous. I'm going to, Cynthia, you speak so kindly to us. Thank you, darling. Well, you're welcome, darling. Anytime. Okay, so who is ready for a spooky story? I've got a perfect one that's kind of funny that I want to tell you, but it's scary. And then I'm going to tell you about one from Newport, Rhode Island. How's that? So, and I have to say this, I've been watching Dark Shadows again, but I have to say this, what my profession is of this psychic stuff was a real problem with my husband. And even we grew up together from the same area. They all knew, blah, blah, blah. And the reality here is, you know, some people can hack that stuff. We were in Salem, Massachusetts in the 80s, and there was a tea room in which I went to, and they knew who I was because I was working for the Psychic Friends Network. Do you all remember Psychic Friends Network with Dionne Warwick? Well, I was one of her premier psychics back in the day. And my husband and I lived in Chesapeake, Virginia. We bought a house that was granddaughter, I think it was, of President Tyler, or no, President Monroe, the granddaughter of President Monroe. And I've got to tell you, that house, when my grandmother was still living and my mother, and they came to visit, I never went in the basement. The basement was dug by Civil War slaves by hand. And then they built this house. It was just gorgeous. But that basement, so this one time that my grandparents Laura, I'm going to tell you something. All right. Are you ready? I hope you're still here to listen to this. I had a stroke in 2017, and sometimes I stumble. Sometimes I have a little hard time getting some things out. So if you don't like it, you, my darling, have my invitation to buzz off. In fact, I think what I'm going to do is help you. Goodbye. All right. Thank you. So, Laura was rude. That's right. Don't be rude. We're here having fun. If you don't like it, lump it. All right. Well, we don't have room for that here. So anyway, my grandmother went downstairs and she was, thanks, Heather. She was very affected. And when she came out, she said, do me a favor and don't go down there. And I never did. I never did. I never did. Okay. So wait a minute. Oh, probably a troll. I'm sure she was. She can troll. Skippity-doo-dah, skippity-yay. Why do American houses have basements? All the scary stuff happens in basements. Well, my darling, not all Americans have a basement. There are some areas of the United States that do not have basements. Basements are for, and attics, hello. Basements were for usually food storage, for weather, like being in there for weather. And also also during the Civil War, they used basements for underground railroads. And I lived in a house in Ohio that was an underground. Someday we'll do that someday. So anyway, that's the way it was. So I'm going to tell you this funny story, and had to do with Virginia Beach, Virginia. That's right, Jerry. No basements in Florida because you'd be flooded out. And I've got so many stories, so I'm going to try to tell you as many as I can. All right, so here we go, my darlings. Ready? Story time. I just wanted to catch up and say hello. So I was studying at the Edgar Cayce Foundation, and this was back in the 80s when I was about 2 or 3. This was back in the 80s, and there were some people there. Now, Edgar Cayce Foundation is based on a lot of spirituality. They're not based on paranormal. And even though Edgar Cayce had a lot of experiences, that sort of thing, it was for spiritual only. So I went there to enhance my education and to study when my husband was out to sea. So there were 4 of us that there was another lady and then 2 gentlemen, and they were married. I was married. So we just kind of, gravitated, hung out, had a good time together. And we got to talking about, her name was Laura. We got to talking about paranormal and ghosts, and they were telling me, because I lived in Virginia 2 times during some tours, and I lived in the Hamptons at one time, and then I lived in wherever at another time. So they were telling me about all these places and all these and whatever, and I said, oh my gosh, we should go. And they're like, do you think we should? And I'm like, yeah, why not? I mean, We're not going to do it on the time that we're taking. We'll just go after our classes and then we'll just go. And so we decided, now, look, this is a time, this was the time. They didn't have all the EVPs and they didn't have all the equipment. And quite frankly, when I go out, I use that stuff very little. Another story. So thank you, Pam. So we said, okay, let's get ready. So we got flashlights and we got some other stuff. One of the gentlemen had some very young kids, and they had a Fisher-Price cassette player. I know you all probably, Fisher-Price is the make and model of that. For those of you, it's a toy, and it is a toy cassette player from way back in the day. Because, you know, this was a time we didn't have cell phones. We didn't have any of that sort of thing. So it came one night that we were able to go, and it was after this time. And one of the gentlemen made arrangements for us to go to Virginia Beach because there was it was almost like a VFW hall. It was like a convention hall, not a theater, but it was a gathering place. So here's the thing. We decided to go, and we went in, and it was just like this. It was I think it was an old school, actually, but the ceilings were high. You went in and you whispered and it would echo. And it was getting late. And you know how it is when you're in a big building and the sun starts going down and things seem to get really darker faster than on the outside. So we just didn't know anything at that time. I mean, I had been with my grandparents. We always went on ghost hunts and everything else. And I never knew the proper way to go about it. So we were just kind of all moseying around and whatever. Well, before we got started, there was another room. It was kind of like a cafeteria that had these metal chairs and tables and everything else. And the three of us were in this other room talking. And this one gentleman was in the other room and he was banging chairs. Now, we had the cassette player going, but he was banging chairs and carrying on and whatever. And we just kept saying, why are you banging these chairs? It's crazy. What are you doing? And so all of a sudden he just stopped and came in and was just smiling and grinning and whatever. So we just all kind of went our way, and there was an upstairs, and we went one way, or I went one way and all three of them went the other. I went into this really interesting looking room that actually, you see my background? Minus the books, it was kind of dark and dreary and yucky like this. And so I'm in there and I thought, I'm going to go over and look at out the window, just to kind of get a bearing on where we are on the outside. I turn around, and by this time, the whole room was dark black. It was dark. I mean, so dark you could not really even see your hand in front of your face. It was black. Well, there's no electric in this place. There were no lights on. And when I looked toward the door, I saw this big, massive, dark shadow entity. I mean, there's no explanation for shadow black masses. There's just no explanation. We don't know where they come from. They're dark, and they're up to no good. I'm just going to say that. So I could hear the other ones talking in the other room, and I was shocked and stunned. And I was just standing there like, oh heck, what do I do? And I kind of backed up a little bit, and when I backed up a little bit, this thing comes forward toward me. Now it was probably maybe 6 feet from me, but the thing was massive, huge. It took up the whole doorway. There was no way that I could say, "Excuse me, dark mass, I'd like to get around you." So it was frightening, and I was starting to get scared. And finally, I just said, "Oh my gosh, somebody help me." And they heard me, and you could hear the steps coming, and the one guy had the flashlight, and that thing just disappeared like that. Well, that scared me, and I said, "Look, I don't need to be. I don't want you to. We're not going to separate again. We all need to stay together. We shouldn't separate." So that was wild. So the next day, we go to the foundation. We're sitting there, we're having lunch, and the guy brings the tape. He goes up to get lunch, and we're sitting there thinking, you know what? I want to know. And I'm like, I want to know, did we catch anything on that tape? Well, we heard disembodied voices, like hello, and a few growls, and a few this, and it was random. But then we started hearing all of the craziness that this one gentleman was making with the chairs and the tables and all this other. And all of a sudden, we heard a few little toots come out. And you know what he was doing? He was having some tooting going on, and was messing with all those chairs and tables to cover it up so we couldn't hear, but the tape picked it up. And I'll tell you what, that poor guy, he never lived it down. I wish I would have kept a copy of that tape. But from that moment on, we went back to that place, and it bothered me so much. I didn't really want to go and look around. That ended that paranormal. But I just thought that was funny that he had a little gas and had to leave it go. So he was banging around on the chairs, and those things happen. So, but that's the one thing that was kind of scaring me, was the black mass. So let me see what time it is. Oh yeah, we've got time for a few more here. So another one that I want to tell you was in a home. It was no longer a home. It was a home that was made into an office in Newport, Rhode Island. There was an attorney that was there. Well, I got bored, and I didn't, I was at the Newport Babe Club and Hotel, but there were a lot of things that bothered me about that place, and I just said, never mind. So I got bored, because my husband was out to sea, and he was at the War College and doing all this stuff all the time. And so I just started cleaning houses for Molly maids, or Mary Maid, Molly Maid, one of those. And I was so glad that I did, because we went into all these homes, and I got to see what all the real estate was like. Well, there was a lawyer that was downtown that had this house. And if you've ever been to Newport, Rhode Island, things are, your house is like this, but if you're in Newport, they have this little list, because of being old and from the winds coming from the ocean, they're a little bit on an angle. They're still foundationally secure. People live in them, they work in them. Not a big deal. I was in them. It's not enough to notice when you're inside, but when you're looking at it, you just kind of feel like you're, the door, you have to, the doorways are off and everything else. Well, there was another lady that was with me, and we just hit it off. We had just such a spectacular time. And the lawyer, when we got there, the lawyer was upstairs. So it was one of these, it was kind of weird, because when you opened the door, the stairway was like almost right in front of the interior of the door. Of course, back in the day when they built homes, they fashioned them from England when they used to do that, and they would have the homes on the second floor. That's why they were called the upper class, because they would, the help and other people would stay on the bottom floor, and you would have your receiving rooms and everything else on the second floor. So it was kind of like this. And so when we got upstairs, the lawyer was still there, and he said, "Oh, I wanted to meet you ladies, and you guys don't get scared, do you?" And I'm like, "Scared of what?" No. Is somebody hiding in here? And they're like, "No." He's like, "No, but well, this place is old and it does make some noises and everything else. And our boss had told us before we left that, well, we might want to be a little, we just may want to just ignore some things." Okay. So we get to the upstairs, the lawyer leaves, and we're vacuuming. We're doing what we need to do. Pardon me. And all of a sudden, we hear a knocking on the interior door on the upstairs. And we're looking at each other. And she said, "Did he leave?" And I said, "Yeah, I think he did." And she's like, "Is somebody else here?" And I said, "I don't know. Let's go open the door." So we're there. Now here's two housekeepers, you may just will say. And, what are we going to do? Hit somebody with a vacuum cleaner? Hello. So right there. And yes, I love Newport. It's wonderful. And I was there during the tall ships too. I had a great time. And so we opened the door, nothing was there. So I said, "You know what, let's just ignore it. Maybe it was just something." So we're doing our thing and, straightening up and doing whatever we need to do. And the next thing you know, sorry, got a text. Next thing you know, we see a man. Now, we knew it was a man, but we saw a man walking from one side of the room to the other. And we were both like, okay. And this man had dark clothes on. He had a long gray beard. It was just kind of weird. And I said, okay, we just have to ignore this. And I'm going to tell you, I was unnerved by it because, I don't think I wasn't grounded properly, and I just didn't think about it. So anyway, we're going along and everything else. Then we hear this man talking in another room. And we straighten up and look like this, and we're like, oh my gosh. So my gosh, then it just started all these things happening. And then there was one of his lawyer books that fell on the floor. And then there was a picture that fell. And I told her, I said, I don't know about you, but I don't think that this dude is going to know how clean this place is. Pardon me. Let's give it a little lick and a promise and get the heck out of here. And she's like, I'm with you. I said, so let's do the best we can. So we called our boss and we said, look, we're going to speed this cleanup and we're going to get the heck out of there. Thank you, my darlings. So our boss meets us there. She goes, okay, I'm going to meet you there. She meets us there. The girl or the lady that I was with was white as a sheet. By this time, she has never been around anything like this before. And she was frightened. She was shaking. Visibly shaking. She couldn't hardly load the vacuum cleaner in the trunk of her car. She was just so visibly shaken. So I said, you know what? I don't know about you, ma'am, but I don't need this job. And if you're going to send me here, I'm not going to come. I'm not going to do this one. That's too unnerving. We don't know what's here. And I said, I don't know if this lawyer just likes to pick, whatever. There was not that much to do. He could run the vacuum and dust those few books that he had up there. I'm not coming back here. If you want to fire me, c'est la vie, c'est la guerre. I don't care. Fire me. And she's like, oh, no. No, you just stay there. You just stay there. Okay. All right. So that was the Newport, Rhode Island one. Then went to Salem, Massachusetts. And I was getting ready to tell you about Salem and that tea room. Michelle, you darling, what are you saying? What are you saying, Michelle? I must say, if I was washing a haunted house, I'd want to be there with Z. I don't know, my darlings. I don't know. Listen, I know this stuff, but it's like I still get unnerved sometimes. I mean, I'm brave, okay? It's very hard to get me scared, but sometimes, and it's knowing when you should go and when you shouldn't go. I'm not one of these, anyway. So Salem, Massachusetts, what I was going to tell you is that my husband, I begged and begged and begged. I wanted to go. And there were some other officers and their wives that were going, and they invited us to go. Now, I was the odd one. All the other wives were nurses and teachers, and there's nothing wrong with that, but I wasn't. And I was looked upon as this woo-woo weirdo, right? And most of the times I got just called a witch or something, whatever, by the captain's wife or whatever. And it didn't bother me, but it bothered my husband. So we went up there. Now, Lori Cabot is a very famous witch. She calls herself a witch. I don't believe it's in a bad way. And when we were there, we stayed overnight. I wanted to see the House of the Seven Gables. I wanted to see we went to the Salem Witchcraft Museum. We went to all these places. I just had an absolute blast. Everybody else wasn't really into it. They wanted to shop and do something. Not me. Take me to why are we here? We got to see all this stuff, right? So there is Lori Cabot's shop. And we're all kind of standing around trying to figure out where we wanted to go for lunch. And I said, you know what, while you're all I can eat anything, anywhere. While you're all wanting to do that, I want to go into Lori Cabot's shop. And they were like, oh my gosh, she's a witch. And I'm like, okay. I don't think I'll fit in her cauldron. If I come out looking like a frog, then you know what happened. But that's not fair. I mean, I'm a Christian, but that's not fair. I just want to, hello. So Lori, is it Crowhaven Corner now, Karen? At that time, she had a big sign that said Lori Cabot on, and this was a few years ago. Okay, so Hi has been there. Hi has been to Lori's store, and I loved it. So I walked in. Now, I had been working for the Psychic Friends Network. So I walk in, and she keeps staring at me because I was making commercials for Dionne Warwick and a few other ones with me back in the day. And so we would go places and people would recognize me. So we go in the shop and Lori comes up to me and she goes, oh, are you Zelda Kelly? And I said, yes. Are you Lori? And she's like, yes. And we just laughed about it because we each admired each other. And it was so, I just loved it. So we were in there and I said, listen, these people outside are just bizarre. And I said, they're driving me crazy. I said, you got to tell me something. Where can I get some Eye of Newt? I need a little bottle with Eye of Newt with a label on it. I'm not going to do anything with it except go out and parade that so proudly in front of this group. And she's like, oh my gosh, I've got the best thing for you. So she gave me, and it was so funny. It looked like something now that you would get off of Etsy that was the apothecary type little bottle, and it had a big eye on it and all this other stuff. I just wanted to make everybody crazy. So I was in there for quite a while, and we talked and everything else. And I said, look, gosh, I better get out of here because hello, I'm not going to be in the favor of this group, but I'm not anyway. So we went in, I went out. They were standing there wide-eyed, looking at me like I had, and I said, hey, where are we going to lunch? And they just wouldn't even talk to me. They were just so appalled that I went into this shop. And so I'm like, gee, do me a favor. If it rains, don't put your head down because you guys have got your nose up so much in the air. You might drown. Well, my husband didn't like that, but my husband was the XO. And so a lot of these were junior officers, so they didn't really talk back to me. I liked the chief's wife. She was wonderful, and we always got along. So, but Eye of Newt tea. Oh yeah, Michelle, she drinks a lot more than Eye of Newt tea. I can tell you that broad. Anyway, so we go out, we have lunch, and they were really put out. And I'm whispering to my husband, I said, listen, Lori told me to go to this tea place. They read the cards, they read the tea leaves, they record it, they do all these things. And she's calling ahead to tell them that I'm coming there. So we're going to eat lunch and then we're going to go there. And he's like, oh, this just, And I said, well, you don't have to go. I'm going to go. This is your gig anyway. This is your Navy. I'm not, hello, I'm just what they call a dependent. I'm going to go to the tea room and I'm going to have my tea leaves read. So he reluctantly went. He did have a good time because, that stuff is all a show, kind of. I mean, that's real. I mean, it was really lovely. I loved it. And so when we were done, this lady comes out. She was just so beautiful and pleasant. And she said, I'm the owner of this shop. And I said, oh God, is there a problem? And she said, oh, no. And she said, do you want to go and sit with your husband so he can hear this? And I said, yes. How did you know? And she said, I can just see, because, he just had that look of glaze over his face. And I said, oh, let's go back. So I sat down and she said, look, Zelda, I've been following you for a long time, and I know people that call you on the Psychic Friends Network. Are you from Newport? And I said, yes. And she said, I would like to offer you a job here. Well, I'm like, hello, perk, perk, perk. I'm perking up. And right away, my husband says, well, we can't because we have a place there. And where would we live here? And she said, well, I have a beautiful apartment upstairs. You could live in that apartment and work for me. And she said, you never know, maybe your commanding officer would be able to, get you something that, even you could go back and forth. So I wanted to do that. And I said, I'm doing it. Well, this is crazy. You can't make any money doing this. I said, do you have an idea of what the salary would be? And she goes, yeah, I'll pay you $72,000 a year. I almost fell out of my chair, my darlings, because $72,000 a year back in the day, in the 80s, in the early 80s, was a lot of money. And that would have meant that I was making more money than my Navy officer husband. So he perked up and we thought about it, but then it just didn't work out. But on the trip, when we were there, we walked out. It had been getting dark. We went to have dinner, and then we all just kind of went our own way. And we're standing, and I forget what they call it. Pardon me for all of you that know, but there's just this beautiful grassy place in the middle of Salem that, you know, these beautiful houses and you can walk. It's not a park, but it kind of is like a park. And yeah, Karen, I could have bought 2 houses then. It's kind of a park. Anyway, I'm looking at my husband and I said, you know, I want to go to the Witch Museum, but I said, I think they're going to have the Commons. That's it. Thank you, Karen. Thank you. Thank you. I said, I think they're going to have a reenactment or something, and I don't want to miss that. And he's looking at me and he goes, what are you talking about? And I said, because I've been seeing people walking around with old costumes on. And he said, there hasn't been anybody. And I said, there's a lady right over there that's got this long brown cape on, and she's got kind of a hood up. And she turned around and looked at me, and she just kept walking. So there's got to be something going on here. And he said, I swear, there's nobody here. And finally I said, oh boy. So I kept seeing that the whole time. And of course, the next day, the wives club did not want to be around me because I was too different, which was fine with me. So I kept seeing them through the trip. When we went to the, oh yeah, that's right, the cemetery is right there. When we went to the Witch Museum, and believe me, it got so cold that day, I didn't even know if I could stand it. And when we went to the Salem Witch Museum, we were in there. And this is why I don't go to wax museums or whatever, because I always see them move. And they were talking, there was one about this elderly lady, I believe her name is Sarah. And I got to tell you, I just kept seeing her move. Like her eyes would just move close to me, or I would see her hand flick or something. And so I have to stay away from wax museums. Madame Tussauds wax museum. Toussaint, Madame Toussaint. So yes, Sarah Proctor, thank you. And I don't know if you saw my video, but I believe Sarah Proctor there's an Elizabeth Proctor from there who was married to, I believe, is it Reverend Michael Proctor? There's some energy there. So anyway, that's not scary. I'm not doing the scary one because I think some of you in the chat don't like the real scary ones. But there's definitely some paranormal there. Now, I'm going to tell you, yeah, great something to our boy, Mikey, former trooper. I've been in Madame Tussauds wax museum in England. I couldn't make it through. They had some wax museums in Niagara in Canada. I couldn't do it. There is a Ripley's Believe It or Not museum in Gatlinburg, Tennessee that I want to do a paranormal thing with. And when I'm trying to make some arrangements with that, and I will go live from that. You'll see me. I'll be in there. And yes, it was John Proctor. Yes, it is very haunted. And then they have a Titanic museum in Pigeon Forge, Tennessee, that I will be also, pardon me, making arrangements um, to do a little something in there. So I'm working on all of that. I want to wait until, probably the holidays are over with, because things are going to get hectic here in November. So tell me, do you guys want to hear scary, creepy, or do you want to hear what kind of story do you want to hear? Because I don't want to scare anybody, but I want to tell you stories that you all like. So let me know. Can you come with me, Karen? Hey, you never know. You never know, Karen. I may have a few guests. You want to hear spooky? Spooky. Let me see. That's okay. I have a lot of spooky stories. Trying to think of one that I can really tell. Scarier the better, please. Okay, let's see here. I'm going to tell you the story of when I was 4 years old. This will scare you. It did me. It was the first time in my life that I'd ever known anything about any fear. It was my mom and dad, my sister and I lived in this sweet little 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom house in Ohio. Pardon me. In Ohio, we were not near any highway, any roadway. It was just kind of in the little suburb, in a subdivision. My grandparents always made sure they lived close by. We were very close to my grandparents. So on my mother's side, that's my grandmother who read the cards. That was the grandmother that I showed you all the picture of, my grandpa and her back in the 30s. My dad's mother is named Zelda. So my grandma and grandpa would go to Wyoming every year, and they would go antelope hunting. It was a thing to do. And so they would bring us back some little, one year they brought us back some cowboy looking outfits, and I loved mine, and I would wear it all the time and everything else. And I was about 4 years old. One of these days I may pick out some, hold on a minute. Oh, okay. I may pick out some pictures and show you all. Okay. So anyway, this one year, they brought us back a bride doll for each of us. Now, they were different. One was for my sister. My sister is about 18 months older than I am, and we shared a bedroom. There was one that was I just thought she was gorgeous. She was about an 18-inch doll, and my mom had my dad make these shelves. Look, everyone. Hello, my darling. Do I love you? He's my top dot. Hello, Richie. How are you, my darling? Thank you so much for being here. Everybody say hello to our dear, loving friend, Microdots, Richie. Okay, so thanks for being here, my darling. I'm so happy that you're here. So my dad made these shelves, I guess, just a little box shelf, enclosed box shelves that he hung on the wall at the opposite end of the foot of our bed. Does that make any sense? Okay, let me give you a little picture here. Say this is where my bed came out, and this is the wall. This is the foot of the bed, and this is the wall at the end of the bed. Okay, so my creep us out. Okay, my darling, this is about to get creepy. Here we go. So my mother would put these dolls on these shelves because we always had, you had the pretty toys, the little play pretty things that you just couldn't play with because we were afraid to break them, right? So that's what was going on. So my mom, they were expensive dolls. My mom didn't want us to play with them every day. And so I would look at my doll. She was on the top shelf. I would look at my doll every night, and my sister's was up there too. And I would just project to her, and I would just tell her, you are the most beautiful that I've ever seen. And I'm telling you, for back then and back in the day, she had these little pearl earrings. She had a little pearl necklace, a little pearl. She had all these little pearls. She had this little veil on and a little wedding dress and these real pretty little shoes with pearls. So it was probably a pricey doll. So every night I would tell my doll, you are so beautiful. I hope when I get to be older that I can look so beautiful and be a bride. I would just tell her every night I loved this doll. Finally, one night, I'm laying there looking at her. Now I was wide awake, and the house was just still, quiet. You couldn't hear a thing. My sister was asleep beside me. She had her own twin bed. And I'm laying there talking out loud to my doll. And I said, I hope you know that I love you. And just then, I have to do this. Just then, my doll turns. She literally turns like this. You see? She turns and looks down and winks at me. Now, I'm going to tell you what, I never knew fear like I did there. And I have the chills already right now. If you could hear those B-movie screams of those women that, they scream in the Hammer films, imagine that. Because I let it rip. And I mean, I just screamed to the point where I could not scream anymore. The tears, my hair was just matted to my head. It was horrible. My sister gets up and she comes over and she's like, oh my gosh, Zell, what's going on? Oh my gosh, what's going on? Are you okay? Are you okay? And I couldn't breathe. I couldn't talk. I couldn't breathe. All I could do was point. And my mother and my dad came racing into the bedroom. I got up and I clamped onto my mother so hard and was screaming. They took me out into the living room. I couldn't even talk. I just screamed the whole time. And it seemed like forever. It was probably a good 15 minutes. I don't think it was Annabelle. I'll give you my idea of what it was. But so my mom calls my grandma and grandpa. Well, my grandma. And I'll tell you the story of Lorraine Warren. I know you've heard of Lorraine Warren and my grandmother one day. But my grandmother was real psychic, empathic. And grandpa was too. Grandpa was a water witch. I think I told you that. It's no witchy, but they call him that when you use two rods and you find the wells. And that's what he did. So my grandmother and grandpa race there. It just seemed like they were there in a flash. I couldn't stop screaming. My grandma and grandpa didn't like the idea that my name was Zelda. So they would call me Kel or Kelsey. And they, so my grandpa comes in and he looks at me and he goes, what's going on with you, Kelsey? And I was gasping and couldn't get. Finally, things calmed down. My sister said, I think it's the doll. My grandpa raced into the bedroom, got that doll, and is holding it and said, "Is this it?" And I was in shock. I could not even think about anything. So my sister said, "Yeah, it's the doll. It's the doll." So, and she's like, "Don't take mine." Grandpa went and got both of the dolls. Well, they let my sister keep hers, but she was not allowed to keep it in the room, so it would antagonize me. So they had a little family meeting. So my grandpa wraps this doll up. Now, this is about 3 o'clock in the morning. Wraps this doll up, and he and my dad, I had to watch out the window, went out to the garbage can, and I had to watch them put that doll in the garbage can, and they put the lid tight over it. And so I took a couple of breaths. And so it was decided that my sister and I would go and stay with my grandparents for a couple of days until I was able to get over it. That was another thing, because their house was haunted too. And so this was the first time that they realized that there was some type of something that was going on with me. And so my dad didn't believe in that stuff. I mean, my grandfather was a Methodist minister, so didn't believe in it. Not his fault. I mean, just the way it was. And so my grandparents took us, and we stayed, and then I was fine. We went back home and we was fine. A few years later, because usually at every holiday, something would come up about the doll. And to this time, I want to go to Zach Bagans' Las Vegas Museum, the Haunted Mountain, and he's got a doll room. And I'm going to tell you, he told me, if you come out here, don't go in the doll room. They will call your name. And I said, and I will not, because I will freak out. So I went, just a few years, and we would talk about it from time to time. And finally, before my grandmother and my mother passed away, they said, yeah, that was really creepy what happened with that doll. And I said, what do you mean? And they kind of looked at each other and they said, wait, you don't know? I said, no, how am I supposed to know? And he said, and my grandmother said, well, that morning when your dad went out to go to work, because Dad worked at General Motors, and he was on the early shift, and we had already left, and we went back to their house. Grandma made my grandpa was Irish, and he would always say, Sass, you could make a breakfast that would choke a pig, is what he would say. I always loved that. Anyway, so evidently, when my dad went out to work, he checked on the garbage, and the doll was not there. Now, we did not have neighbors like that. We did not have neighbors that would have seen, and they wouldn't have known what it was anyway, because it was wrapped up. But the doll was gone. We never did know what happened to it. Dad didn't take it. Nobody taked it. Yeah, nobody taked it. Nobody took it. And they all swore never to tell me. That was the beginning. And that's when my dad said that he wanted to send me away because he thought that there was something wrong with me. And of course, my grandparents and my mother said, absolutely not. She's not going anywhere. So it was kind of like I fell under the wing of my grandparents and all their little psychic hooly-hoos, that they always did. So as time went on, I'm going to tell you this last one, and I don't tell this last one often, but I'm going to tell, there's 2 stories within there. So first of all, years later, when my grandfather passed away, my grandmother remarried, and he was an Italiano guy. And so there was a house. He came home from work and he said, look, there was a house that evidently there was a family that had gone on vacation or something, and they got in a wreck and they all passed away. I'm so sorry. And people from the work knew, and they were going over to the house and just walking around in the house. Now, that sounds bad, but back then it was just kind of like, oh, okay, whatever, okay. So I was much older then. And so we went over to this house and we just walked in. I mean, there was still food in the refrigerator, but people had been in there and you could tell they were getting into things. And the pictures, oh my goodness, I couldn't even look at the pictures. It was a family. And they were just a beautiful family, so close, but it just gave me the willies to know that we were in their home and they weren't coming back. So we went in to this home and they had TV there. Now, these are the days before internet and cell phones and all that other interference, I like to call it sometimes, because that kind of thing does interfere. So give me just a second here. I'm not going to be like Attorney Melanie. I promise I won't bother you and swallow in the microwave. Or the microphone. Sorry, not the microwave. Yeah, hello. You are so adorable, Microdots. Richie, I love you. Okay, so we're walking through there. I went through this phase in my life before I went to the Edgar Cayce Foundation to study. And it was kind of this, we couldn't figure out if I was a receiver or a transmitter. And for those of you who have any psychic or empathic, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. Don't know if I put off vibes or if I attracted vibes. We were trying to figure all that out. I walked past a television and my grandma gasped. She was like, oh. Now, of course, the television wasn't on, but back in the day when they had those big televisions, the big tubes and all that stuff, it wasn't flat screen. It was like those big tube televisions. And the screen was pretty big. If the lighting was right, you could just see yourself in the television screen when the television was off. I think you all know that. I think you still do in some regard. So I walked past this television. My grandmother gasps. Her husband comes in and goes, what the heck is going on? And he looks, and they're looking around the room. And I said, what? And I turned around and I glanced at the television, and there was someone that was following me, and their reflection was in the television, like reflecting behind me at the television, on the television. Now, the television wasn't on. The electric wasn't on. So it was the reflections. And sometimes when you get just the right vibe, you're going to see that. So it bothered my grandmother. And she's like, I think we need to get out of here because you don't want to take anything back with you. It was a man. It was a male. And he was just following me. And you could see it. You couldn't see it in the natural, but you could see it reflecting. Now, I have problems with mirrors. I don't have mirrors in my home. I don't, bathroom mirror, obviously, hello, but I don't put mirrors. And for those of you who don't know, you never hang a mirror across from the other one. That's why they have a lot of problems at the Myrtles paranormal, pardon me, at the paranormal, because that creates a vortex and it creates a portal. You can actually open a portal with it. And I don't mess with any. I don't do the necromancy. I don't do that stuff at all. So when we got out of there, when we left, we were pulling out the driveway. My grandmother looks back, and it was a split level home. I don't know if all of you, yes, my darling Auntie Beb, Auntie BB, Auntie, I call you Auntie Beb because it's Beb BB too. So it's not Auntie Bev. Oh Lord, I would not cuss at you like that. So anyway, when we're backing out of the driveway, my grandmother looks, and it was a split level home. For those of you who are here that do not know what a split level home is, it's like you walk into a foyer and you have stairs that go down and you have stairs that go up. And it's called split because you can go in either direction. And that's what this home was. So it had a big bay window in the front. When we were leaving, my grandmother went, "Oh my God." And when we looked, there was a man standing in the living room. He didn't look like us in the natural, but you could tell it looked like he was standing back. But he was standing in the living room and watching us leave. So my grandmother says, "Oh, we're not coming back here. There's something, no, didn't do that." So there we go. Haya says, "My dad would put aluminum foil on the antenna and he would ask me to hold the antenna because it would help mix." Yes, hello. And I was the remote back then. It was always Zelda, change the channel. So yes, we did that. Let's see, do I have time to tell you one more? Let me see if I do have time to tell you one more. There was another place. This was back in the day. I had this wonderful friend. Her name was Greer. And I loved Greer Garson. You know, I love the old Hollywood movies. And I was always a Greer Garson girl. And I don't know if you know this, but at Christmas time, do you remember the little animated drummer boy? That is narrated by Greer Garson. And I love how I just love her. So anyway, that Greer, and I would call her Greer Garson, and she just had this lovely little British clip. She would just talk I just loved her. So she would really put it on too for my sake, and I loved it. I just drank it up. I loved it. So and time out. I do not think that Turtle Boy is streaming tonight. I don't think so. I think he's going to stream tomorrow night, or I would teleport you all over there, but I didn't see anybody. So when we end here, we'll end here, but I just wanted to share that with you. So will not be any teleportation devices this evening. Thank you very much. So you may put your trays back in the upright position. So here we go. So Greer met this young man, and he had a friend. So Greer and her young man and this friend and I, now, was just hello friends. There was nothing there. And I was always too busy anyway. So we heard about this one place out in the country, that was, they said that if you drive in the cornfields, you could see a light that would keep up with you in the cornfield as you were driving. So if you slowed down, it would be there. If you sped up, then it would speed up with you right along the way. We wanted to see this. So we went to pardon me, there was something flurrying here in front of me. All right, so we went up there one toward the evening. And so it was spooky. I mean, the corn was high, and I mean, it was like August. They didn't combine yet. So it was high, and we were there, and we really didn't know what to even think. We come upon this house that was dilapidated, broken down. The windows, the top windows, I mean, if it was the epitome, it was the epitome of a haunted house. Just going to tell you. Think of a haunted house, and it was there. So there was a tree that was growing into the top level through a window. There was all kinds of just crazy, I mean, it was just broken windows and broken everything. However, there was a candle that was burning on the bottom floor of this house. See the candle over my shoulder? Wait, over here? Kinda, sorta, yeah. It was a candle that was burning. Well, the guys wanted to go in, and I said, look, I'm not going to do that. No, I'm not doing that. I'm not going in. So we went up the road a little bit, and we turned around in a driveway, and we went really slow. And when we were going really slow, the candle went out. And I said, man, oh man, I'm creeped out. We have to come back tomorrow in the daylight. We got to come back tomorrow in the daylight. So we did. Now, we never saw the lamp in the cornfield, but we were brave. We pulled into the driveway because we saw there was a candle burning in there again. We pulled into the driveway, and holy smokes, as we pulled into the driveway, that candle went out. So this Greer, my lovely girl, was staying back with her boyfriend. They were kind of standing in the front yard. And I said, look, I'll go in. If you go in, I was talking to the other guys. Look, if you go with me, I'll go in. There's strength in numbers. I'll go in with you. Let's just see. So we get up to the house, and all of a sudden, there's this little old man coming out from around the house. He had a cane, and he was like, I was like, oh my gosh. He was pale white, had pink eyes. I don't know if I can say it here. I'm not going to, so don't say it in the chat. But there, he's just that's the way he looked. And we just didn't know. So we were trying to think. I was trying to think on my feet. And I finally said, oh, hi. I said, is that tractor? Because the neighbors next door had a tractor down by the road that was for sale. And I said, oh, hi. I'm here to ask you about the tractor. My dad is looking for another tractor. And he looked at me, and he's like, he was like this older fellow. When you get to see an older fellow, they'll pick up their cane and they'll just kind of talk with their cane. That's just the way it is. It wasn't anything aggressive. And he said, oh no, that's not mine. That's, and he starts talking to the guy that I was with. So I kind of like edged over and sneaked over and looked into the house because there was no windows. And it was this antiques, dark, cobwebby, black. I mean, talk about antiques. Of course, I would never steal anything from anybody, but I just love to look, see? And it's like, I'm thinking, holy mackerel, did this guy like live here? So we finally get to the point where we're leaving and all this other things. And then I just said, you know what? I think I need to get back. My they're getting ready to milk and I need to get back. Whatever. So we left. My girlfriend Greer said, we're coming back tomorrow. And I said, I don't think we should. I said, he lives there. I just feel really weird about that. I don't think we should. So we waited about 2 or 3 weeks. We did go back and it was in the daylight. And the tree was cut down that was growing into the house. The tree was cut down. Some of the house was torn apart and there were Amish people by this house. So we just didn't know what to even think. So we went to the neighbors. And of course, I always want to be in the know. So we went to the neighbors and I said, can you tell me what happened with the gentleman next door? Did he pass away? And their eyes got big. Not like Jennifer McCabe, hello, but they got big. And this lady said, oh, honey, you don't know? And I said, no, what's going on? And she said, well, this gentleman was by himself and no one had seen his wife in a little while. So his son was in the military and overseas. We didn't have a conflict at that time, so there was nothing going. He was just in the military overseas. So they called him, sorry, I'm not making, there's something around here. So they called him and said, look, we haven't seen your mom and we need you to check on your dad. Well, he got emergency leave and he came on home. Well, evidently, when they walked in, the son had not been home for a long time. Okay, he was in the military. And dad was in there. And mom was in the basement, laying on a bed. And she had passed away a few months earlier. And they said they did not know how, but he had been rubbing like machinery oil on her to keep her from decomposing. Now, can you imagine? So evidently when they got home, they called the authorities. They got mom out of the basement. They put dad into a home and they sold the house to the Amish, and the Amish went in there and they built that thing up and it was just fantastically gorgeous. It was beautiful. You would have never even known. But can you imagine if we would have went in there and if we would have seen mom laying in the bed in the basement? I mean, I would have had my 4-year-old self happen all over again. That would have just flipped me out. And the Amish people did say that they heard some knocking going on and that but they're not into the haunted stuff, I don't think they were Amish. Pardon me. I made a mistake. They were Mennonite. And they said that they heard knocking and some things, but, they're not into that sort of thing. So it just didn't bother them. So that was that story. And I got in trouble from my dad because he's like, can you imagine if you went in there, Zelda? I'm like, yeah, but you don't know. How are you going to know? So, my darlings, we are at the 2-hour mark. Do you have time for one more? Or do you want to say good night and do you want to check your candy and eat all your candy and watch the Dracula movies and all that stuff? Give me a vote in the chat. Do you want one more story? If you do, let me know. If you don't, we can go. Hey, that rhymed. So yeah, that was crazy. Yes, yes. You guys, do you know how much I love you? I just want you to know. I would not be here if it were not for you. Seriously. Oh, I'm up, my darlings. I've got so many stories. I mean, I've been around since 1754. I've got stories. I'm just kidding. 1755. But yes, okay. More. Here we go. I'm trying to figure out one that I want to tell you kind of a funny, quick one. And that was one where my grandmother met Lorraine Warren. You know, she was Lorraine and Ed Warren are very famous paranormal. They're like the king and queen of paranormal. They were at the Conjuring House. They were at the Amityville Horror House. Well, there was a home in Cleveland, Ohio. Kristen, let's see. My darling, your voice, Zelda, you are gorgeous. You're telling, oh, Kirsten, I'm sorry, I misread that. Kirsten, aren't you the one? I'll give you a little piece of candy later. Thank you. So, my grandmother was very well known. Now, again, this was not in the day of the cell phones, internet. So it was word of mouth from my grandmother. And people would come from all over Ohio to visit her. And my grandmother would charge $1 or $2 to give a reading. And she would read with those gypsy witch cards that I've shown you before. I don't know if you've seen them or not, but anyway. So, oh, I've got to tell you this. There is a video that he put out today, and I don't know, Richie, if you're going to be putting, I watched it probably 5 or 6 times. Jennifer McCabe, and I'm gonna tell you another thing. I want you to all watch for Richie's video. It was called Fatal Error. Oh, it's members only. So you got to go to Patreon and go watch him because it was wild. But there's one that is called Fatal Error. And I think that was the first video that I saw of Richie's. And I'm going to say, I was hooked. I'm like, oh my God, this is so right on. It just gave me the chills. So anyway, back to the future. So now we are here, and I forget what story I was telling you. Oh, Cleveland, Ohio. There was a home, I guess you want to call it that, in Cleveland, Ohio, that's called the Cleveland Castle. Now, Zach Bagans has been there. A lot of ghosty people have been there. And, you know, there's just been a lot of, but back in the day, now I was younger. Back in the day, I was little. My grandmother got a call to go to Cleveland Castle. And this was one of the times that I just basically said, oh my God, Kirsten, how much do I love you? You gave out ducks and turtles. How cute is that? Oh my gosh, I love that. That is sweet. I love it. Okay, so anyway, one of these days I want to get up into that neck of the woods because I would sure love to meet everyone. So back to Cleveland Castle. I'm going to quit looking at the chat so I don't get distracted and get told off again. so Cleveland Castle. My grandmother got invited to go there because there was paranormal activity. And we went. Now, when we got there, my grandmother, this little, I mean, she was a corker. I'm just going to tell you. My grandmother, we walk in and this woman is like, "Oh, yes, you are, you're here for this and this and this." "Yes, I am." She said, she holds out her hand and says, "That'll be $5. She said, $5? And she said, "Yeah, $5 for you, $5 for your husband. And are those your grandkids? I want $1 for each one of them too." My grandmother lit her up. Well, this place was supposed to be haunted, and it wasn't, because what would happen is this woman would get two of the kids to run around the house and make noises and, bang on stuff and do the woo stuff, whatever. And she would charge people to come in. My grandmother lit her up. So, in just a very classy way. My grandmother looked like Claudette Colbert. So she had this aura and air about her that was just something else. So Lorraine Warren heard about that and called my grandmother. And she called and told my grandmother that she was sassy. And from that moment on, that stuck. And my grandmother's nickname was Sass. Even my grandpa would call her Sass. The whole family, Sass. And that was Lorraine Warren that called my grandmother Sassy. So Lorraine was happy about that. But anyway, another story. Let's see. I'm going to have to save some other stories because they are longer, but I want to tell you. Let's see, what story should I tell you? Mrs. Satterfield. So back in the day, and of course, if you haven't guessed by now, my family were all farmers, my grandfather. My grandfather worked for Louis Bromfield on Malabar Farm. Now, Malabar Farm is in Ohio, in Lucas, Ohio. And that is where the Shawshank Redemption was filmed. And in the movie, when you first opened up and Andy was at that cabin and he went in and blah, blah, blah. Well, that's in a place called Doris Duke Woods. And my grandparents lived across the street from there. And then they moved into another house. Louis Bromfield wrote Ferdinand the Bull, and he had so many actors and actresses there. And Lauren Bacall and Humphrey Bogart got married at the farm when my grandparents worked there. My grandpa would help Louis Bromfield farm. And so I think I told you that story, how he loved Humphrey Bogart, but he could not stand Lauren Bacall. He said she cussed like a sailor. So near that area is called Mary Jane's grave. Now, this Mary Jane's grave was written about by Louis Bromfield. He was a famous author, and he wrote some books that had been made into movies. One was called And the Rains Came, and that had George Peppard in it. When I worked there, because when I grew up, I worked there, I worked in the cattle AI department, and then I took over for the horses. So I was always kind of around there. Well, of course, my grandma and mom and I would want to go up to Mary Jane's grave. Now, Mary Jane was written in Louis's book called Pleasant Valley. You can read about her in Pleasant Valley. Now, this was long after Louis had passed away and my grandparents had moved off. We were there, and they came to pick me up from work. Beautiful summer day. Grandma and mom are out riding around, and they're like, well, let's go get Zell, and we'll go to the cemetery. Hello. Fun days. But we loved it. So my grandmother packed a little meal for us, and Mary Jane's grave was back this long lane. And my grandmother had a Park Avenue. Hello. And so it was one of those things that, you were sitting in the car doing this because there were so many ruts and rivets and in this road. And it was like an old dirty road and, whatever. And we were trying to navigate this road. And believe me, it was only one car width. So if there would have been somebody coming out, it would have been a challenge. So we get back to Mary Jane's grave. Now, the story of Mary Jane is this. Mary Jane, they called her a witch, but I don't think so. I think that she was just a woman that loved to live off the land. She loved the herbal stuff. She may have been a little blessed. You know what I mean? But she was a good person. So the legend had it, when Mary Jane passed away, they buried her in the cemetery and faced her because, now traditionally, all graves face to the east. It's a religious thing. We won't get into it, but usually all graves you're facing the east when you're buried somehow, some way. So you're supposed to, anyway, that's tradition. So they buried her backward. They turned her stone backwards. And that was just such a sad thing, I think. They didn't know, but hello. So they buried this they buried this beautiful woman, I'm going to say, here in this grave area, and it was beautiful. I mean, you're talking out in the rolling hills of Ohio, beautiful grasslands, big, beautiful oak trees and pine trees. And I mean, it was just like the epitome of, well, remember when, pardon me, Red, who was Morgan Freeman, who took the bus ride in the Shawshank Redemption? That's what it looked like. That's the area that I've come from. Time out here. Thank you so much for all you're doing, Miss Zelda. Well, you know what, Tammy? You're just so beautiful. Thank you for being here. Karen, nothing really happens. It's a tradition. So nothing really happens if you're not buried facing the east. It's just, we can have that discussion someday, but it's nothing that, I mean, when you're buried, you're not here anyway. You're off to the great you're off. So anyway, so we're going back to Mary Jane's grave. Now, fast forward a little bit, that after she passed away, there was a young woman who took pity on her, who felt sorry for her. And she went there and she buried, or didn't bury, I'm sorry. She planted a seedling, a tree, an oak tree seedling there by the grave. Rumor has it, tradition, I don't know, supposedly, allegedly, I don't know. This tree, but it was huge, my darlings. I mean, this tree was like, hello, big. Grew very quickly. And when it grew, and this is no joke because I saw it, there was a heart that grew, pardon me, in the tree. And it wasn't just an anomaly. It wasn't just on the surface. It grew in the tree so that it was actually a bulge. And you know, some trees will do that. It was a bulge in the tree and it grew into the shape of a heart. Okay. So kids would go back there. They would do whatever kids do in cemeteries and horse around and other things. And this was the daylight, so we felt kind of safe. This was a beautiful day. Sunny day, beautiful. Well, my mom was very empathic, extremely empathic. And okay, so anyway, I'm sorry. So extremely empathic, but she didn't want to be. And the same thing with my sister. They just didn't want anything to do with it. Me, I was like, hello, give me everything. Hello, I'll take it all. But mom didn't want, but boy, when something got a hold of her, it got a hold of her. So we're there in the cemetery. We're having a little bit of lunch, but just like normal people eating your lunch in a cemetery, right? So we're eating lunch in the cemetery, and my mom all of a sudden gets up, walks over to this tree, and she starts crying. And she's like, Mary Jane, I'm so sorry that you went through all this. I can just feel the anxiety. She just went through she started really feeling all this. And my grandmother is looking at me like, what the heck is going on? I said, I don't know, Grandma, hello, it's your daughter. You go get her. So mom is over there crying. All of a sudden, my mom says, I wish I could trade you places. And just then, this big roar of thunder happened. And my grandmother yells at my mother and said, oh my gosh, don't ever do that. So my mom, in tears, is looking at Mary Jane, the grave. The tree, the limbs and the twigs and the leaves start looking like they're blowing a little bit. I walk over to the tree, and one of the branches, the lower branches, and it's an oak tree, kind of starts moving toward me a little bit. And I look at Grandma and I'm like, I'm getting the heck out of here. This, wrong, no. So I'm taking my mom's hand and I'm going through here. And I said, Mom, this isn't right. We need to get out of here. Just then, another clap of thunder, and all of a sudden, this downpour of rain to the point where we gathered up our stuff and we're jogging to the car to get out of there. It was, my mom did not recover from that for, it was about a day or two. And my grandma was very concerned over her. But see, my mom would really take on that empathy, the sympathy of someone, and be very affected. She would feel pain of other people. She had to be really careful. And so when we left, we said, what had happened? And she said, I heard my name. She called me over there. I heard my name. So I thought that was really creepy. So I did this little gig on it. Oh, it's been a couple of years now where I told this story. And I was looking it up, and evidently they'd had so much trouble with people going back there and not only vandalism, but problems with people getting very ill, violently ill, and all these other things, that they closed it. They closed it down. They cut the tree. Somebody went back there and cut this huge big tree down. And that was just so weird. But now when you drive by there and you drive by the opening, you have to have permission. There is some type of state, Ohio State, something or other, that takes care of the cemetery itself and does all the mowing, and they're not going to let it go downhill. But they said they are very careful and cautious about this, and they cut the tree down. I wanted to go there when my dad passed away, and when I went up there, and I couldn't get back there. I even went to the place and said, look, hello. I gave them the history. Look, I used to work for Malabar. I used to whatever. I'm going back. I'm not going to mess around. You can check my car. I'm going back here for just scientific purposes, historical purposes. I want to take some pictures. Nope. They wouldn't let anybody back there. So one of the other properties, and this will be my last story for tonight, one of the other properties that is around Malabar Farm is called the Seeley Rose House. Now, you can look this up on YouTube. There have been other people that have had this experiences and everything. Of course, we always hung around Malabar because they host all these festivals. They host all these different places. It's just really a beautiful farm, and it's still a working farm. So, you know what, Lisa? I just saw this. Lisa said, I wonder if the person who cut that tree down became sick. That's a lot of energy to deal with or mess with. We always wondered who that was, because I feel the same. You don't cut a tree, unless it's dying or dead or can cause harm to someone. You don't cut trees. You just don't cut trees. That's my thing. You don't cut tree down. So, there's sometimes you have to, hello. But anyway, there's another house. It's called Seeley Rose's house. Now, it belongs also to the state, and they have rangers that live in there. And when I was working there, rangers could not even live there very long. There was too much activity. Well, the story goes of Seeley Rose, and then I'll bring you to the future with my grandmother, and of course my mother and I, the three musketeers looking around at the paranormal. The story was that Seeley Rose was a young girl that had she had mental issues. And it wasn't that she was not a danger to anyone or anything like that. She just had some problems, and it was very sad that she did. And of course, way back then, now, this was like, I think in the late 1800s, when they didn't have help for that. So there was a young man that lived up the road on a farm that he would be kind to her and just try to be nice. And of course, Seeley took it as though she envisioned marrying him when he was just being kind to her. So she would go up to their farm, this boy's farm, and she would sit with him and go out with him if he were to milk or do whatever. And her parents came to visit Seeley's parents and said, we love you, we love your daughter, but we think this is going a little too far. And do you mind just asking her to not come around? So Dad and Mom sat her down, had a talk with her. Now, she did have siblings. I don't remember sisters, brothers, but I do remember that she did. I think it was mainly brothers. And so she took this very hard. She took it as though the parents were trying to keep her away from the love of her life. and she took it like extremely hard. So, back in the day, you milk, you have sour cream, you have cream, you make cheese, you make cottage cheese, you make all these nice little dairy things. Well, they made cottage cheese. They were known for in that area. My grandmother said for, buy cottage cheese from the family. And so Celie would get this rat poison, and it came in strips, and she would soak the strip into the rat poison. And oh my goodness, hello, alert from Toots. My darling is a brand new member. Thank you so much, honey. I appreciate you. You know how much that means to me. Thank you for becoming a member and supporting this channel. I love it. Thank you. And that reminds me, if you're watching, if you'll please do me a favor, I want to see your DNA on the like button, please. Oh my gosh, stop the presses. We have 10 gifted memberships. Bless you, my darling. Good vibes to you, my darling. Thank you. I'll give you a high five there, right in the camera. High five me. Yeah, I felt it. Thank you so much. Welcome to the family. Welcome to the family. Thank you. That's so kind and generous of you. And look at all of you that are getting little memberships. Bless you. So, Celie would soak this. Here we are. Let me see if I can. I'm going to tell you something. StreamYard. Why is that coming up? I apologize. Here we see what we need. There we go. StreamYard has been a little snarky with Zelda. So I had to write them a little something and basically say, look, I will be glad to come back on a paid subscription when you get things to be working correctly. Other than that, I will be using the free version. And that's why you're seeing the Powered by StreamYard logo in the corner instead of my logos. But thank you so much. If you hear me, StreamYard, you're hit. Okay, so anyway. So she was soaking this papery, it's like fly paper, only it was for rats. And it was in the cottage cheese. Well, Dad started getting sick. Mom started getting sick, and the brothers started getting sick. Her plan was, she just thought it was a conspiracy and that she was going to just skippity-doo-dah right on out of there and right down to this man that she was in love with. Well, Mom went first, and then another brother. And Dad was a good old hanger-oner. He just wouldn't go. So Celie had to take the situation in her own hands, and she had to give him a double dip of this stuff, and finally, goodbye, Dad. So her whole family was gone now. And nobody could figure anything out. Now, we're talking back in the day that, they didn't have things that they could detect this type of thing, right? And so people were just thinking, well, maybe they had food poisoning. And Celie was saying, oh yeah, we had food poisoning. I was even a little sick. I just couldn't even, I was a little sick, blah, blah, blah. Well, they were always suspicious. And I bet you if Celie Rose had social media back then, she would have been all over there putting out everything that she did. Because they sent a reporter, a newspaper that was suspicious, sent a reporter and befriended her. And they would sit and have these long talks. And finally, this reporter says, I have this boyfriend that I really love, but my parents don't want me to be, oh yeah, I have to take a minute here and be a little snarky. Former Pooper Proctor. I'm just going to call him Pooper Proctor. Former, he's not former, but I like to think that he's former. Former Pooper Proctor, to figure it all out in 8 hours. I think it was like 45 minutes when he did that, but don't get me started, because I tell you what, Karen's my girl, and no, we're not doing that. So anyway, so this reporter starts saying, I have this man that I love, and he is, he's the love of my life, but my parents don't want him around. It's pretty much mimicking the same story. So they were talking about it, and finally Celie says, you should do what I did. Hook, you should do what I did. And went and told her everything that happened. Well, it wasn't long for them that they came and got Celie, and Celie had to go away to some type of institution, and there we are. Later on, years later, maybe a few decades later, when my grandparents were living there, Louis Bromfield always said, stay away from that house. I won't have anybody living in that house. And nobody really understood. And then when Louis passed away, and years later, and I started working there, of course, when they had park rangers that lived there, because now it's a state park there. I mean, the whole farm is a state park. It's just beautiful, gorgeous. Look it up, Malabar Farm in Ohio. Well, we're walking, because you can do these walking things. We're walking, and this house was built so close to the road that there's probably only like 3 feet from the front porch to the road. That's how close it was built, and they couldn't move it when they put the roads in, so they just let it go. We were walking through there one time. There was no one in the house, because there wasn't anyone living in there, because they couldn't keep these rangers staying in the house. What do we hear? Pardon me. Hold on just a minute. I have to say, no, I'm still live. Thank you. I'm still alive. I'm still here. So we're walking down this road, and we hear this. On a window upstairs. And we're stopping, thinking, what is that? And we see a park ranger. He's up at that big house, they call it. And, nobody was around. We're just out walking around. It's a beautiful summer day. And it was just gorgeous. And we kept hearing this knocking. We look up at the second floor of this house, and it had a curtain there. I have a little napkin here. I'll use it to demonstrate. This is the curtain. Oops, sorry. This is the curtain in the house, right? And when we look up, we see the curtain come back like this, and we see a couple of little fingers, 3 fingers, and then the curtain goes back down. So we just didn't know what to do. So we're just trying to act a little nonchalant. And we kind of walk again, and we hear this tick, 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 tick on the window. And I look at my grandma and I said, do you think the house is open? And she said, I think it is. We're talking like we're trying to be ventriloquists, like as if ghosts can, read your lips. So, right? So I said, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. Let's just kind of stay around here And then when we hear that ticking again, I'm running in that house. So we just kind of were walking around. We were across the street. We were looking at the sassafras trees and blah, blah, blah. And we hear this tick, tick, tick. And just then we turn around and the curtain closes. I made a beeline into that house, ran up the steps because that house was old. And I mean, it wasn't like it was a big house. You could pretty much see everything. Ran up the steps, went in the front. The house was completely empty. There was nothing or no one there. And when I got to the top floor, I pulled back the curtain at my grandma. I'll tell you what, my grandma and mom about fainted when I did that. But I pulled back the curtain and I'm waving at them and I'm like, nobody's here. I looked around that whole house. There's not a basement in it. I went room to room, looked in closets, looked everywhere. There was nothing. And I want you to know that the moment that I walked out of that house back on the road, we heard the ticking on the window again. And I said, I've had it with that broad. I've had it with that chick. We're getting out of here. Pam says, my mom and I had lunch there 2 years ago. They have a beautiful lunch spot that is called the Malabar Inn. And it used to be an old house that they made a little restaurant out of. It's just gorgeous. But anyway, those are my stories. I want to thank each and every one of you. I have a lot more, and I'll write them down for the next time we do this. But Saturday, I'm going live, and we're going to be talking about... Hi, Lynn. Hi, Lynn. My darling, rewatching late, Zelda. Well, thank you, my darling. Happy Halloween. You should see me when I take my mask off. To you and the kitties and your son. Well, thank you. That's so kind of you to say that. Thank you. Thank you. And Sharon, thank you so much, my darlings. I can't, y'all, I want to cry half the time. Because you all are so good to me. Bravo. I need to have some sound effects. Like every time somebody sends me a super sticker or a membership, I need to have a duck quacking or something. I need to get one of those Elgato boards. I'm going to get one that I can say, my favorite one is one pounding FBI open. Of course, I would be playing that the whole entire time that we're talking about the CW and the Moressi, the spicy meatball. And I would be playing that every time. I'm going to leave you with this. I cannot wait to see those Jughead evil monsters perp walked with bracelets, silver bracelets, shackled, snake walked. Now, this will probably be fed court and we're not going to see it, but I'm certainly glad that we probably will be able to get a few little pictures. I love it. I love it. We'll do that. We'll do that. Anyway, my darlings, you just made my Halloween so special. So special. Oh, I can't even talk. So special. You make it so special, my darlings. Maria is still in here. And don't forget, please like and subscribe. Please go over there. Look in the description. And please subscribe over there to True Oracle Tarot Psychics. I'm going to be on there. And I will be doing card readings. And we're going to just do one pulls here and one pulls there and blah, blah, blah. Because we've got to get up our watch hours over there. And we've got enough to go live. But, this YouTube stuff is a lot of work. And I appreciate it, but I'm going to tell you what, I enjoy it so much. I'm going to be here Saturday night at 7 p.m. I can't wait to see each and every one of you. I hope you all can sleep tonight. And I hope my stories weren't so disturbing. I have to be careful because I got some really disturbing ones. 7 p.m. New York time, that's Eastern, New York. Thank you, each and every one of you, for being here and hanging with me and doing all the fun stuff. And tomorrow is November 1. Now, I'm going to tell you something. We only have 45 minutes left in October for me and for many of you. It is going to be a new moon in Scorpio. But there's going to be this, November is going to be a little on the snarky side. I just want you all to be careful, be watchmen, just take a breath or two because the planets are aligning and it's just getting weird. I'm just going to tell you that. We're going to have a weird, probably very intense November. So that's good for you and for me. And I'm going to make sure that we're going to be doing good because I'll be here. Auntie B, I can't remember what I said for October. I can't remember. I've said so much. Hello. The other thing is we have a Mercury retrograde coming in November. It's November 26th at 2:37 a.m. UK time. We are 5 hours later than the UK. The shadow period for Mercury retrograde is going to start about on the 7th. And then we have a full moon on the 15th of November. There's going to be some unearthings. And I'm going to tell you, all of these high profile cases, just like with Karen and like with Delphi and with these other cases, this is a time from about the 2nd of November, so day after tomorrow, I might as well just say that. Buckle up, buttercups, my darlings. You just wait and see. Because this is going to be a time, astrologically and psychically, that things are going to be unveiled. And I mean, could be shocking unveiled. Shock. Don't be in shock and horror. But crazy unveil, shocking sort of kind of. And there may be some things. I don't want you to get distracted. I just want you to take a breath. Okay? Everything just, you know. Lisa says the astrology warns us to keep our cool around people, bite our tongue before saying something, because people are very hot-headed at this time and may react in a harmful way to you. Agreed. And thank you for what that. I love that. You know, I always think in songs. Many of you do too. And the moment that I saw where it says, warns us to keep cool, what was that West Side Story song? Cool, cool. Da, 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 cool boy. Da, da, da. Remember that one? That went into my brain. And now we've got some magic carpet. Right? I can't sing because you know I'm going to get dinged if I do sing. I was about ready to sing that song. What is it? Remember the Jeffersons song, you know, where we're moving on up. Remember that one? I wanted to sing that so bad tonight, and I just didn't. But anyway, cool operator, coast to coast, LA to Chicago. That one, I love that one. I love Sade. Oh, I'll have to listen to that one. I was a Fleetwood Mac chick. still am Stevie Nicks. And if I can look like Stevie Nicks, ho, yeah, Betty, she's still out there singing, and I've heard her. They came out with Barbie, came out with a Stevie Nicks doll. I wanted that doll, but no dolls for me. So remember, my darlings, buckle up, because I'm just going to tell you about Karen Reed. Now, this is what I saw earlier today after, because I'm always pulling out a few little cards. That's all I do. I sit here, card. I'm going to tell you what yeah, no ding ding, Zelda. That's right. No ding. Ding dong, the witch is dead. Witch, oh witch, chin the witch. When, okay, never mind. That was bad. Okay, so Karen Reed. There is more. Buckle up. There is more. I expected more Better letters to come out. Attorney, the father of footnotes, to have more come out. But I think there was so much going on this past week with Miss Karen that this coming week, there's going to be more. However, there's going to be a little slowdown, because everybody wants to see what's going to happen. They're taking a breath, because remember, we have November 6th with the Supremes. Ooh, baby, baby love, my baby love, my baby love, ooh, my baby. Yes. The Supremes. Stop in the name of law instead of love. So we're just kind of like, we're treading water right now. I want you to imagine ourselves as a stealth glider, as a hovercraft, okay? A hovercraft. I know. Why did I say I couldn't sing tonight? Oh, my voice. But see, I talked that out. My cat is listening to your voice. Oh, I sing to my cats all the time. You know what? I think it's because I talked it out and I got all this out. Sometimes that works. But my voice was really gravelly, and now. So I want you to pretend like we are a hovercraft. What, Angel? I just keep hearing this meowing. We are hovercrafts, and we're just sitting here. We're waiting to go into action. We're waiting to just sit. We're going to see. We're going to take a breath, and we're not going to worry, because I'm going to tell you why. The feds will come in when they're supposed to come in. It doesn't make any difference. It doesn't make any difference how much we worry or how much we have anxiety over Karen's case, because it's going to happen when it happens. And bless Karen, say a prayer for her, because this is heavy, and she is a champion. She and Turtle Boy, you see in my readings, she is the champion, my friends, and we'll keep on fighting till the end. They are the champions. They are the champions. No time for losers, 'cause they are the champions of the world. That's right. And with that, my darlings, I'm going to say goodnight to you. I love you all to pieces. And yes, Karen, it was so very cool to see her in Turtle Boy's chat last night. I love them. And listen, all this stuff going on between YouTubers, we love them all. We just let them work things out the way they need to work things out, okay? So don't get boomed up over anything. It's all going to come out, all going to work itself out. Everything is going to be okay. I'll see you Saturday night, everybody. Much love to you. so much. And thank you so much for making my Halloween so great and bringing back these great videos. And thanks everybody for being here. Don't forget, click, like, subscribe, click the bell. Don't miss a thing, because my darlings, I'll see you again very soon. Saturday, be here. Aloha. Bye.